Chapter 15, The Plan. Of course, Durua did not leave. Chishan's actions were very fast. That day he immediately submitted the well-prepared marriage report, and in less than 2 days, it was approved. Of course, this matter also had the credit of Grandpa Chi. Ever since Grandpa Chi knew that he was going to have a great-grandson, he had been rushing to the hospital all day. Don't misunderstand, it wasn't because of young Master Chi, but because of his precious granddaughter-in-law. Rua, be careful, I told you not to come. Isn't it good at home? That brat Chishan is very strong, he's already fine. After following her into Chishan's hospital room, Grandpa Chi was happy, and his mouth kept on nagging. She looked at Chishan's face, which was getting darker and darker, amused. Have you told the doctor? Today, he wanted to go to the civil affairs office, to register. Originally, he could have directly asked someone to bring the marriage certificate. But he deliberately went over to get it himself. Chishan nodded, pulled her to sit down, kissed her on the face before letting go. Are you tired today? No. There's really nothing wrong with me. She helplessly replied. Why would she want to go for a checkup? Before, Aunt Lu had taken care of her wholeheartedly, and she had deliberately taken care of her body, and now that she was carrying the baby, she really felt relatively at ease. Unless it was necessary, she didn't want to go for a gynecological checkup. He was just asking, seeing her wasn't uncomfortable, and wouldn't say anything back, but it was Grandpa's suffering. Grandpa really wanted to know if the baby in her belly was a boy or a girl, although, a boy or a girl was fine, but, people are always curious. Looking at Grandpa's appearance, Chishan made up his mind, not wanting to let her go for a checkup yet, to avoid giving someone satisfaction. This brat was obviously angry at Grandpa's words when he entered the door. When they arrived at the Civil Affairs Bureau, Xiang Xing and the others also arrived, and the group slowly walked in. Congratulations to you too. The Civil Affairs Bureau staff brought the marriage certificate in front of Chishan and Durua. She felt as if a burden had been lifted. Looking at him, this man was already hers. He was obviously not as calm as he appeared on the surface, tightly holding her hand, his hand already drenched in sweat. The two of them received the red book, his right hand wrapped around her waist. He lowered his head and whispered in her ear, "Wife." The corners of her eyes trembled as she looked at him calmly commanding the people to make the hospital bed. Did he learn command in military school and use it for this? She originally wanted to go home, because the honeymoon was in the hospital. The adults said it wasn't a good thing, but before she left, she saw his resolute expression, but on his face, she could see through the 4 words, calm and lovely. Her heart trembled. In the end, it was still Grandpa who waved his big hand at the crucial moment. We don't fear anything. They immediately left her in the hospital. Of course, before leaving, Grandpa Chi only lacked to hold Chishan's ear tightly, wholeheartedly instructing him, not allowing him to do anything bad. Chishan held Durua in his arms, contentedly sighed, buried his head in her hair, and kept muttering, "Wife. Durua. Wife. Rua." She narrowed her eyes, and did not respond, letting him cling to her infatuatedly like that. Placing his hand on her belly, he suddenly let out a low laugh. Grandpa has been muttering all day wondering if the baby is a boy or a girl. Actually, I'm also really curious. He turned around, propped himself up with his hand, and looked at his wife from above. You said this child is a boy or a girl? I guess. Okay, young Master Chi was obviously pretending to be serious during the day and finding an excuse to vent at night. He kept talking. After a long time, he realized that her body was a bit stiff in his arms. He hurriedly asked, "What happened?" From the moment he said whether the child was male or female, she stiffened. It turned out they still wanted her to go for a checkup because of this matter. She smiled guiltily. Only then did she remember. It seemed like she only said that the child was still there, and did not report to someone that there were 3 babies in her belly. He looked at her calmly, secretly calculating in his heart, what could have happened to make Madame Chi show such a flattering smile. Both hands were placed on his waist, burying her small face in his chest, stuttering a few unclear sentences. He did not dare to believe it, but was also overjoyed. He hugged the person in his arms tightly, fiercely saying, "Why didn't you say so earlier?" Forgot. Her weak reply came from her chest. Not knowing how to react, he sighed, his chin resting on her shoulder. Starting tomorrow, no need to bring me any more supplements, you wait at home for me, do you hear? Ever since the two of them got along, she started to personally prepare some traditional Chinese medicine for him. This person's body had quite a few injuries. If he wanted to grow old with her, he had to start taking good care of all the injuries, big and small. Letting go so easily? She raised her head and looked at him. Their eyes instantly met. He leaned close to his treasure, softly kissing her lips. Thank you. Waiting for her to regain her senses, his hand was pressed against her stomach, gently caressing back and forth. She breathed heavily, forcing herself from a long tiring day, and slowly fell asleep. Seeing that she had fallen asleep, he stopped his hand movements without a trace, carefully placed her on the bed, gently caressed her sleeping face with his fingers. The happiness made him feel like he was dreaming. The second day, she had a dreamless night, no longer tired from yesterday. Her spirit seemed bright. Early in the morning she got out of bed with him to wash her face, walking hand in hand in the hospital. When Qin Yan and the others arrived, they discovered that Qishan was more protective and meticulous towards Du Rua than before, taking care of her completely, afraid that she would get in the way of something, very much like holding her in his hand for fear of dropping her, holding her in his mouth for fear of melting her. The corner of Qin Yan's mouth trembled as he looked at Qishan, who was seriously acting like a dog. In the end, who was injured? Who was taking care of who? Hey, I say, can you two stop being so clingy? Xiangxing didn't care. This was trying to ruin her eyes. She was still a single noble. Du Rua was about to speak, but was interrupted by Qishan. Don't talk so loudly, it'll ruin my child. He frowned. Xiangxing quickly covered her mouth. Okay, she forgot about this again. However, she shouldn't blame her. Du Rua's complexion was too good, not at all like a pregnant woman. Thinking of this, Xiangxing aggrievedly glanced at Du Rua. Du Rua smiled innocently at her. No, Qin Yan thought this was wrong. Qishan also didn't know Du Rua was pregnant for the first time. Why did he feel especially nervous today? Qishan seemed to see through Qin Yan's doubts, holding Du Rua's hand. The end of his eyebrows couldn't hide his pride. She's pregnant with triplets. Quiet, completely quiet. After half a day, Qin Yan regained his senses, and could hardly contain his bitterness as he said, why is your luck so good? Everyone was the same age. Why is young Master Qi about to be a father? Qin Yan resentfully lifted Yao Yuyu beside him. Really? Yao Yuyu and Xiangxing's faces were both excited. In a few months, there would be 3 white and tender babies for them to play with. Thinking about it, they all felt very satisfied. Everyone excitedly surrounded Du Rua. Xiangxing and Yao Yuyu wanted to touch them. Du Rua was amused. In the end Qishan sternly shouted to stop. She finally let out a sigh of relief. But, she relaxed too soon. Grandpa Qi also arrived at the hospital early. Behind him were Qishan's parents. Mom, have you touched enough? He looked impatiently at his mother, who was rubbing his wife's belly. Touching for how long, dominating this place. What, can't I touch my grandchild? Mother Qi angrily turned to glance at her son. This is her grandchild, TSK. She thought that there would only be one grandchild in the future? Who would have thought that her daughter-in-law would be pregnant with triplets? That's right. Mother Qi nodded in satisfaction. Grandpa Qi and Father Qi could only sit on the side, although their hearts were a little itchy, but there was no reason to go forward and touch one. Grandpa Qi could only circle around Mother Qi and Du Rua. How is it? Did the great-grandson kick the child or not? At first, Du Rua's face was still red as if she was about to bleed, but now she was very calm. After all, she was an elder. Grandpa, the child is not that big yet. If it takes another month, the fetal monitor will be clearly visible. After forcing for a while, several people calmed down, and all sat properly. Rua, according to your current state, we will discuss the banquet after the baby is born. Otherwise, I am worried that your body will not be able to take it. Mother Qi and Du Rua carefully discussed, worried that the young man would not be able to understand the elder's intentions. Mom, you decide for yourself. Du Rua didn't understand this kind of thing very well, but right now, she felt tired very easily. It was really not suitable for a banquet. Du Roi, I heard from Qi Shen, you still want to go abroad after giving birth to the child? Father Qi asked. Du Roi heard this question, looked at Qi Shen, the other party seemed to feel her gaze, stepped forward to stand beside her, silently expressing his support. Mother Qi didn't say anything. In her opinion, naturally the daughter-in-law was the best to be by her son's side, but she wasn't a vicious mother-in-law. If the daughter-in-law had her own thoughts, she wouldn't hinder her. She sat up straight, organizing her thoughts in her mind. Dad, I hope to be able to study medicine abroad. If she said that before, it was because of perseverance until now. Now that she was together with Qi Shen, she hoped even more that in the future she could openly rely on her own abilities to stand by his side. Father Qi frowned, obviously not really agreeing with this decision. You now have 3 children in the future, your husband and children are both in the country, how will you study abroad? Mother Qi also looked at her affectionately. Father Qi continued to say, I'm not gesticulating about your affairs, I just want to hear if you guys have any plans. Seeing his son's nervous appearance, Father Qi explained a little unnaturally. Hearing this, Qi Shen knew that his father had seen through Du Roi. She probably wouldn't let the child leave her, worried that if he got married it would be like not getting married, his wife would go far away, but he still didn't have the heart to make things difficult for her. Dad, Mom, these past few years, I also wanted to take advantage of my youth to work harder. Ah. Before he could finish speaking, his left hand was stuffed into a soft hand. He looked at the owner of the hand without knowing the truth. Du Roi only saw her face swaying, smiling weakly as she said to Father Qi, Dad, I've always been interested in medicine. This time my mother passed away, I've made up my mind to study medicine. Du Roi paused for a moment, thinking about how to organize her words. I've learned some knowledge before, although it's not systematic, but it's still considered a bit of a foundation. Revealing a few things to the other party at the right time, later, they wouldn't feel abrupt. She unconsciously stroked Qi Shen's hand. I also don't want to leave the child and. Qi Shen. Suddenly feeling her hand tense, the smile in her eyes deepened a bit. In the 1 or 2 years after giving birth, I'll try to contact the school, study theoretical subjects on the internet at home. Then you can't keep going to class like this? Although he still had a questioning look, there was also a hint of satisfaction in his voice. Father Qi's eyebrows relaxed quite a bit. She was still young and already had a definite goal. The younger generation was formidable. Obviously, Father Qi was gentle. She also understood, and continued, after the internship course, I will fly there to listen to the lecture when there is a class. Father Qi was startled and stunned for a moment. This matter? He looked at his father and wife, a bit hesitant. This was too much of a waste of energy and resources. You'll be tired to death. Qi Shen unhappily tugged Du Rui's hand, and felt happy because she and he thought like this. This matter was not something that could be thought of overnight. She must have thought of it long ago when she decided to marry him. The feelings were still lingering in her chest. If it wasn't for the fact that there was someone else, he really wanted to pull her and kiss her fiercely. No, if the curriculum is too dense, I'll take the child along to stay there for a while, she laughed and refuted. That's fine, anyway he can't come home all day. Mother Qi obviously thought of her son's work, being a soldier there, how many days would he be home? Father Qi obviously also thought of this point, awkwardly coughed, asking other people's daughters to stay at home. But his own children cannot stay at home all day. Isn't this just letting the prefecture officials light fires and not letting the people light lamps? I already feel that it's not wrong. Little Shen just happened to take advantage of these past few years to work hard. Grandfather Qi suddenly spoke at this moment. Towards Du Roi he officially looked with different eyes. The little girl had grown up, planning for her and her family fluently, still his own good eyes, choosing a wife for his grandson early. If he had a beard, he would definitely be proudly stroking his beard nonstop. Really, he really forgot who had previously felt that the two of them were not suitable. Qi Shen pondered, and nodded at the side. Father Qi and Mother Qi glanced at each other, and nodded in satisfaction. Previously, they were a little dissatisfied with their daughter-in-law. After all, their family's status was in Shangjing, and they could definitely choose many girls with better conditions than Du Roi. Thus, their son could go up in the military and government more smoothly. However, seeing their daughter-in-law, they realized that the older the ginger, the spicier it was. Grandfather's eyes were indeed far apart from the two of them. If the daughter-in-law studied medicine, if she studied well, she would bring benefits to her son in the future, and would definitely not be inferior to any other girl. Thinking of this, the gaze she looked at her softened a lot. Durua and Chishan smiled at each other, and in the bottom of their hearts, they let out a sigh of relief. Although in her heart, she had already prepared to study medicine domestically, but now that the elders agreed, it was the best thing.